Well, I would like to welcome you to another amazing episode of You Were Designed for Greatness. This is a podcast of Vibrant Living International, and our mission is to empower you, spirit, soul, and body, provide tools, inspiration, and encouragement for you today. And I have a special guest with me. She has a big story to tell, and hopefully some things that we can really learn about her story and what she has to share. So, Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Donna. It's such a pleasure to be here. I just love you. I love what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Where do you live in the world?
I am in Denver, Colorado, and it is a beautiful, sunny, gorgeous day out there today.
It is where I am in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as well. So, tell me a little bit about your family and what you're doing today in your life.
Right now, my home is filled with my husband, who is an incredible human being. We have been married for about a year and a half now, and our count them, six cats. When we met, I was going to be a crazy cat lady, wasn't interested in having a relationship at any point further in my history. I had four cats of my own. He had two cats of his own and a dog. So when we got married, we just started telling everybody we had a petting zoo. Um, I have a son who is married, and he and his wife just had their first baby. So a brand new grandmommy. And my husband's daughter is expecting her first with her husband this year, later on in December. So I'll be a grandmother twice before the year's out.
Oh, well, congratulations. It is an
Thank you.
amazing thing.
It's so cool. I love it.
It is. It is. So, tell us a little bit about what do you do professionally today?
So these days, I am a full-time author and public speaker. I do professional artwork on the side. I paint a lot of my own book covers, and I'm a trauma recovery mentor for people who have been through traumas and they're looking for a way to retrain their brains on how to fight back against trauma reactions.
And that's what you're doing today. But where did you begin your whole journey of life? And would you tell us whatever part of your story, the way you would like to share it?
Well, my life begins a very cold, freezing day in Germany in December of 1979. Um, I don't remember much of Germany. We left when I was only 2.5. But the first the first instance that I remember actually being molested, I was only 4 years old.
Hmm.
It happened again throughout my teen years, starting when I was 12. And there were strangers at the swimming pool. There was an uncle who was an uncle by marriage. There was my brother. There were um, older brothers of friends. There was at one point at 17, I was raped by somebody that I thought was my best friend. So, with all of this being built up, I had been turned into a sex object at such a young age. I believed that that's what my life was. That's who I was meant to be. And that's all my life was ever going to be. And it was a really difficult thing for me to try and deal with. I wanted to fight back against it, but I had these patterns built up in my life. And I kept on seeking out this love and acceptance wherever I could get it. And I didn't understand that I was looking in all the wrong places for it. Because of these patterns, I had learned the people that you love, the people who hurt you. And if they don't hurt you, that means that they don't love you. And it set me up for a long history of failure. And it was after the age of 18, I was trafficked 3 different times in my life.
Oh, my. So, we hear that word a lot, human trafficking. What does that really mean? What is the misconceptions that the general public has?
There are so many. The biggest one is we need to understand what human trafficking actually is. And it's not something that you can really Google. You have to look at regular, actual, credible sources for this. So, my definition comes directly from the Department of Homeland Security. And that definition is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain labor or commercial sex acts from another person. So we were talking a little bit before the episode, and you notice there's no mention of money. There's no mention of age restrictions. There's no mention of transporting a person from one place to another. What we're talking about there is mixing prostitution and human smuggling in with human trafficking. Probably the biggest misconception that we have is the kidnap scenario. It is so much easier to get somebody that you already know and trust to do something that they don't want to do than it is to get a total stranger to do those things. If somebody's going to kidnap a child or somebody of 18, 19 years old off the streets, that person is going to fight. They're going to fight like their life depends on it because they know at that point it probably does. If you get your own child or your own grandchild or your boyfriend or your girlfriend to do something that they don't want to do, they're more likely to do it without fighting you, physically fighting you, because you are offering them something in return that they desperately want and need, and that is that love and acceptance that I was looking for. The kidnap scenarios are incredibly rare in the world of human trafficking.
So 3 times this scenario happened in completely different places and times in your life. And I asked you this before, but I'm asking it again because the answer is so good. What set you up to be manipulated? And how can we notice that about others?
Definitely the early abuse was a key factor. Basically, this is what we've referred to in common tongue these days as being groomed. I was taught that that's what I was. I was a thing. People were going to take what they wanted from me. This constant manipulation. There was also an instance of constant drug use when I was a child. My mother illegally put me on Ritalin when I was 4. Took me off for a few days so that she could take me back into the doctors when I was 5 and get a diagnosis for me. And I was on this medication until I was 15 and took myself off. I was a teenage runaway at that point, didn't take the medication with me, of course. And they put me into a psychologist. And the psychologist had already been fed a bunch of lies by my parents, and they believed this person truly believed they knew who I was. And their advice to me was that if I wanted to have a relationship with my father or with any man in my life, I needed to like what they liked, and I needed to be the one to make the effort. Paired with everything else that I had already been through, this was devastating and set me up for 38 years of failure.
That is just awful. I don't even have words to describe. You are already so impressionable. And then to someone to tell you the way that you get love and the way that you get acceptance is just do what everybody else likes.
Right, right.
Oh my God.
There's a movie that came out 20 plus years ago now called Runaway Bride.
Yes.
In the movie, Richard Gere is going around and he's asking all of Julia Roberts' ex-boyfriends how she liked her eggs cooked. Every single one of them said she liked them poached like me, or she liked omelets like me. And my running thing after seeing that movie for the first time was I didn't know how I liked my own eggs. I wasn't even sure if I liked eggs. I did everything that everybody else liked to do, to the point where there were some things that stuck with me for life because I truly enjoyed them. But there's a lot of stuff that I got into and absolutely hated and wanted nothing to do with.
That's one of my favorite scenes when she's sitting in the diner and she's got 5 different kinds of eggs going, I want to find out what I like.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite scenes. I talk about that movie all the time because all kinds of not everyone is trafficked, but so many women are manipulated into saying, just do what your significant people in your life want. And we met it's identity theft. It's, it's identity theft, which if anybody's listened to this podcast before, that's one of my biggest things is I want to stop identity theft. I want us to know who we really are. So how did you get free?
Well, there are 3 different times that I was able to get out of trafficking specifically to get free. One of them that was thanks to my absolute obsession with watching the TV show MacGyver when I was a kid. Absolutely loved Richard Dean Anderson. I've written to him and told him that he saved my life. He's never responded, but I have to believe he knows. But there were many scenarios where I was attempting to get out. One of them in particular, there was a way that I tried to get out by suicide. That one was pretty scary. But really, what helped me to get out of the final scenario of human trafficking, I was 31 years old at the time. I had been through so much in my life that I had studied enough psychology on my own, just wanting to understand these patterns, wanting to understand how people think, that I started leaving this little breadcrumb trail. And I started to make him believe that I had such a deep trauma bonding. We used to call it Stockholm syndrome. I had such a deep trauma bonding that I would do literally anything for this man. He was my life and my world, and I was devoted forever. I was over in Scotland at the time. He had all my documentation, and I had no money other than $11 left in my bank account. I had practically nothing. I had nothing to give. I had nothing to lose except my life. And over a period of 2 months, throughout this continued abuse, I kind of set things up. Towards the end of that, I told him, I said, I came over here to Scotland on a fiance visa. And the day that we were supposed to get married, the day that we told him we were going to get married, is already come and gone. And if I overstay that visa, it's only for 6 months, I could get kicked out of the UK and never allowed back according to UK law. And you could lose your job if they found out, because, you're a police officer. You're supposed to uphold the law. But if you send me back, I could come back in 6 months, and that would be just in time for Christmas. And it would be our first Christmas together. And wouldn't that be a beautiful thing? And within 2 hours, after 152 days of being there, within 2 hours, he'd bought me a round trip flight.
Wow. So you kind of turned the tables.
I did.
And I take it you did not take the flight back.
I know, actually, I did pretty much everything else under the sun for the next year, trying to keep myself alive. When you go through something like this, the results are so mentally damaging that you have a hard time trying to reconcile what your life is going to look like now. You feel like less than human. You feel like you're a broken person, you're not worthy of love, and you're never going to be loved. Like I said, I was 31 years old. I'd already been through so much. I was constantly in failed relationships or domestic violence or attacked or raped or molested in some way for most of my life at that point. I think the only time in my life where I wasn't was before I was 4 years old. And then for a brief period of time when I was about 5 to 9. And that was about it. Everything in my life was this constant pain. I didn't know how to deal with it. So rather than trying to just take my life as soon as I got back to California at the time, I set up a bucket list. I had seen the movie All About the Bucket List, and I wanted to set up my own bucket list. I wasn't going to be ready to go until I got these things done. And on this bucket list, every single time I seemed to get one thing done, I remembered two other things that I wanted to get done. So that entire first year that I got back, I was constantly on the go and doing things. I did things that I would never have done otherwise. I drove from LA to San Francisco to visit a friend that I hadn't seen in a while. I went on vacation to London and to Paris. I got to go on the news. I traveled. I did photo shoots. I was on the Queen Mary. I did so many incredible things that year. And I collected all these little ticket stubs and all the little pictures and mementos and fridge magnets. And I put them into this massive shadow box. And that shadow box right now hangs outside of my bedroom door as an everyday reminder of all the things that I did and didn't do that kept me alive. And that return flight ticket is in that shadow box. And it hangs in a very prominent place in the shadow box to remind me that making the decision to not do something is every bit as important as making the decision to do something. You have to be purposeful in what you do in your life.
Well, that's amazing, doing all of those things. What happened after that year?
Things got a little haywire. He came looking for me. I was constantly in hiding. I saw him one day banging on the neighbor's door. He had my address off by one number. Eventually I moved away from there, and I moved again and again and again, trying to just kind of hide. I didn't want to be known. I didn't want to be seen. I went into hiding, and the attacks didn't stop. He kept on posting all these photos and videos of me being raped and molested all over the internet, and then emailing them to friends. Every time I got a job, he would send the same thing to a boss. I lost jobs, I lost friends, and just I started to shut down. Finally, in 2016, I packed up a U-Haul and I put all my cats, all four of them, into this U-Haul, and I traveled from California to Colorado in an attempt to start over again. In 2019, I discovered that he had done this again with all these photos and videos, but rather than sending them to a boss, because he couldn't find any information on me for where I worked, he had put everything up on a pornography website, and he took whatever he could find from my social media and linked it to this pornography so people could find me, and they could follow me online, or they could track me down and figure out where I was or where I lived. And it got really scary. I didn't know about it until all of a sudden it all blew up at once. And apparently he had been doing it for a number of years. The worst part for me was when I was in the grocery store and was recognized. When I lived in LA, I had been on Alias and Will and Grace, and I had modeled for Harley Davidson. I'd done some really cool stuff. But that day in the grocery store, I wasn't recognized for doing any of that. I was recognized for being in a rape video on a porn site. And it just turned my world upside down. So immediately I reached out to two different anti-trafficking organizations. One of them immediately got me into counseling, which I desperately needed. And I didn't trust the therapist because, of course, the previous interactions with one when I was a kid. And the other one paired me up with pro bono legal services to help fight back. And this legal team was going out and contacting the pornography websites and having this stuff pulled down, and really just going after it and attacking it. And a year and a half of therapy, I was finally able to write my autobiography. That book was published on my 10-year anniversary of freedom from trafficking, which is June of 2021. And the very next month was when I met my husband.
Mm. That is beautiful. Learn, and anyone out there that has dealt with any of this, be sure to contact Amanda so that you can get these skills on how to overcome there with that much mental trauma. It isn't just ordinary counseling that brings you through this, and she has learned the safe places to do. So make sure you reach out to her. At any point, did God get involved in your life? I mean, a true relationship with God?
Absolutely. So when I was a kid, I would sneak away from home and run off to church on Sunday mornings when all the kids were trying to run away from home so their parents didn't drag them to church. I was running away from my family to go to church. And I had this foundation set up. My pastor, when I was that age, was just this fantastic, really understanding, kind man. I absolutely adored him. But I used to get in a lot of trouble because my parents didn't want me going to a non-denominational church. They said they were Methodist, but they weren't going to take me to a Methodist church because it was too long of a drive. So I was very conflicted. I always believed, always. For a long time, I also believed that God forgot that I existed, but that wasn't the case. When I was in Scotland, when I was in trafficking, the day that I nearly commit suicide, that was when he showed up the most. I had left the house that morning and decided that I was going to end my life. At the time, I was a smoker. I had one cigarette that I brought with me. It was going to be my last one. And I went down to this church that was built in the 1600s. They had a little cemetery right next to the church. And one of the headstones had been so weather worn that all I could read on the headstone was the year, and it was 1776, which is an American independence from England. That's what I was looking for. So I took this to be a sign, and I sat down next to that grave, and that person that was 6 feet under, whoever it was my best friend that day. It was the only friend I had, and I told them everything and sat in the graveyard and just sobbed. And I think it came out kind of as a prayer more than talking to somebody who was beneath me. I was actually talking to somebody who was above me. And I kept on praying, please send somebody to come and find me. And nobody came. And I got up and I sat on the church steps. I tried the doors were locked. And I sat there for a long time and I watched people walk past me, and I watched hundreds of cars driving past me in this town. I was right on the main road. And I prayed again, please send somebody to see me. I just need somebody to see me. And nobody came. And finally I got up and I made my way down to the train station. And that's where I was going to end my life. And my plan was that I was going to sit there on the platform. I was going to smoke my last cigarette. And then when I heard the train coming, I was going to get up and run parallel to the tracks until I got to where the train was, and then run in front of the train. And I sat there on the platform. This man walked out and he asked me for a light for his cigarette. And I gave him my matches. And I told him, I said, you can keep them. I won't need them anymore. And I wanted him to ask me why. Because if he would ask me why, I would tell him, and maybe I would get the help I needed. And he didn't ask. Instead, he handed them back to me and he says, oh, I won't need them either. And I knew I couldn't make him care. I could not make this person reach out to me and ask me why. And then I saw this little guy. He was probably about 4 years old. He walked out onto the platform and he took this man's hand. And this little boy, I'll never forget him. When he looked at me, he did not look at me with the eyes of a child. When he looked at me, he saw me. He saw me in the way that I had been praying somebody would see me. It took a child for me to feel like I was seen. And I feel like it was the first time at that point that I had really been seen since I was his age. And I knew I couldn't do to him what had been done to me. I could not take away this child's innocence by doing what it was that I had planned on doing that day. And it took me about 20 seconds to realize that I wasn't running towards the train. I was running back toward my prison. And on my way, I was thanking God for miracles not yet received, because if he was going to keep me alive in that moment, my life was going to mean something, and it was going to be so much more beautiful than anything that I had ever imagined. And it is. It really is. It took a long time to heal and to get to where I am, but I wouldn't trade this life for anything.
We both have tears. Oh, oh my goodness. Learning how to overcome all of that, and for God to show up in the most unexpected way, is such an amazing, amazing story. And here you are impacting other people's lives that you may never even completely know all that your story is touching. And so, Amanda, thank you for not giving up. Thank you for keep fighting. Thank you for keeping seeking God and talking to him. Thank you for all that you're doing. I just think you're amazing.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So how can people get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest way is through Facebook. I'm very active on Facebook. It's probably an addiction. Facebook.com/Amanda Blackwood Survivor. But I do also have my website, which is growthfromdarkness.com. I have a secondary website called detailedpieces.com. I'm easy to reach through any of these websites, and you can find out more about the trauma recovery mentorship, or one of my 13 books, or my 2 podcasts, or whatever it is that you're looking for. You're going to find most of that information on one of these 2 sites.
All right. We will put all of that in the show notes as well. So again, thank you for sharing. What would be one closing piece of wisdom that you would give to someone?
We've grown up our entire lives, most of us, being told what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that's a lie. The man who said this phrase originally was Friedrich Nietzsche. He died in the 1800s in an insane asylum. It's okay to let go of that idea now. That's not what makes us stronger. Our abuse, our situations, the tough times that we go through, that's not at all what makes us stronger. We're already this strong inside. God has given us that strength already. We just have to dig deep to find it. You've already got it in you. Just find it and get the help you need.
Absolutely. Again, Amanda, thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, Donna.
Well, thank you for listening to another episode of You Were Designed for Greatness. I hope this touched your heart. This is a deep subject. And whether it is completely human trafficking or all kinds of sexual abuse that occurs, there is hope. That's what today's message is. No matter where you find yourself, there is hope. And Amanda and I will see you. That is for sure. We will look you in the eye and we will see you. So reach out to either one of us. We have resources available to support you and help you. Don't do this alone. Thank you for tuning in today. There will be links in the show notes to contact with both of us. Thank you very much and have a wonderful rest of your day.
I made you cry. I'm sorry.